Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Monday, November 24th edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲, here in the WellPoint studios, kicking off a brand new week on the show that keeps its finger on the pulse of Lowell and the world around it. And of course, today being Monday, I figured it'd be a great time to have a Monday with Marty.
Hey, good morning.
Our good Marty Laurie is here in the studios with us. Good morning, Marty.
Good morning, Teddy. Good morning, viewers.
Good to have you here, my friend. How's
It's
it
fun.
been?
It's good. It's been quiet the past month, So, no, I get laid off like a lot of other people, and I just been taking it slow.
You actually living retired life, or are you?
Yeah, basically, I really haven't. I'm not even looking for work. If it comes, it comes. I will. But I will say, I think it was through the enterprise. They had a package where you get 2 weeks for every year. So I get like 22 weeks plus a week's vacation plus. So I get 23 weeks.
Okay, that's geez, but you don't need to rush to go anywhere.
No, but you stop, you die. I'm one of those people that I'm 70 years old. I'm almost 70, and I still go to the gym, but I like being active. So even if it was a security guard walking around checking doors and buildings, that keeps you moving. And that's all I'm looking for at this stage.
Get you out of the house, gives you something to do. All right. Well, if anybody needs an experienced, Lowell guy who knows the city very well and loves to walk through our downtown or any neighborhood.
I still do. I go to the health club. I park the car. I use the treadmill sometimes, but sometimes I'll just walk all the way to the river, walk all the way through the acre. I still enjoy Lowell.
Well, good. I'm glad you're keeping active. I hope you do, and I'm glad that you're here on Monday morning because we got a lot to talk about here on Monday with Marty. We'll get right to the discussion in a quick second. Let me just first thank my Daily Pulse sponsors: Ray Booten, licensed realtor in Mass and New Hampshire, certified appraiser, both states as well. Find them online. realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint for hosting us here in the WellPoint studios. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, WellPoint. Some other sponsors we'll thank. Let's get right down to it, though, with our special guest, Marty Laurie. All right, Friday, Lowell City Hall, the big hubbub, the recount took place.
Yeah.
And after hours upon hours of, procedural stuff and making sure all the ballots are separated, marked properly, counted properly, tabulated, examined with a fine-tooth comb, we were right back where we started, a 10-vote difference between Dan Finn and Belinda Duran. Belinda Duran is now...
Congratulations.
We can officially congratulate her, and she can kind of exhale. She didn't want to talk until the process played out, and then issued a Facebook statement afterwards. I imagine it must have stunk for her, right? Everybody kind of focused on Dan Finn. Oh, to come so close and not be able, how's he going to sleep and this and that. But you also got to feel for Belinda Duran, right? Because she did have more votes on election night. That margin grew from 4 to 10 during the course of that week when they hand counted some other ballots. But she had to wait till, the inevitable petition for the recount. Then you hold the recount. Then you actually, tabulate everything again. She couldn't, I feel like she couldn't really get a chance to celebrate, almost like she was robbed because of the circumstances, just robbed of her chance to celebrate and enjoy her election night victory like everybody else got to celebrate on Tuesday, November 4th.
Yeah, it does happen. And I'm glad he did do a recount. How do you say to your supporters, the people who have gone out and held signs or gone to your parties, it's 4 votes? I'm just going to say, what the heck? You can't do that. And Belinda's an attorney, a very good attorney, and she knows that. She knows there's a process involved. And as much as anyone, I'm sure Belinda understands, and I'm sure she would have done the same. And I'm sure she didn't make any statements. Again, she's an attorney. So any statement she makes leading up to it, it's like the mayor's race. Now it's thrown back at you. So you don't say anything. You just let the process go. The last one I remembered locally was John McQuaid and Judge Cooler Harris. My wife worked at the Lowell Sun. John's wife worked at the Lowell Sun, Carol McQuaid, the late Carol McQuaid. And I think that came down to 1 or 2 votes. It was close. And you need people. That time, I think it was the auditorium where they did them. I'm not sure.
So the count, when the count was complete, they each had one fewer vote than they had when they went into it. Again, how that happens, I don't know. But the one interesting moment that did occur is that one of the few ballots that was actually challenged, and it was counted as a Belinda Duran vote, and ultimately the election commission looked at it and said, no, it can't be counted. It was a ballot that was clearly the voter, whoever the voter was, intended to vote for Belinda Duran and did, filled out the oval. The problem is it was the ballot from the preliminary election on September 9th. It had the 4 names of the 4 candidates in District 3. There were no at-large races on the ballot. So Belinda's attorney tried to say, well, listen, clearly the intent of the voter was to vote for Belinda. But, you couldn't know Finn's attorney said, look, it says it in Massachusetts general laws. You can't count that ballot. It's not a legal ballot.
Newman's great.
He had Newman. And he didn't get to use them all that much.
Right.
But it was, I asked the question, I said, so how does a ballot from the preliminary election get
mail-ins
counted?
They never sent their mail-in ballot in.
So that's one of the theories.
That would be the first thing I would think.
Nobody knows for sure. Did they send it in late? Did it arrive late? Did it arrive during the next?
Now you're blaming the post office.
No. Did the voter mistakenly? More than likely, the voter mistakenly thought this is my ballot for November. So as long as I get it in by November 4th, I'm good. The other theory, though, that I was told, and I was told it has happened before, because I asked both Will Rosenberry. I also asked one of the election commissioners who I was standing next to the entire time. They said sometimes these ballots get stuck in the machines.
They could, yeah.
So
they don't check the machines after everything.
So that was my question. Nobody opens up the machine, cleans it.
I thought they did.
Between September and November, and cleans it or whatever. If it was stuck in there, I would think you'd have found it before the night of November 4th when you started using those things again. So I tend to believe it was the candidate the voter just mailed it in late, mistakenly thinking it was a November ballot.
If you look at your mail-in ballots, there probably was a few that weren't mailed in for the election. They probably had people who received one and never returned it. My guess is, it's election time, and they sent it in. Not being malicious, but they sent it in. Now, if someone tried to vote twice and they were mail-in ballots, well, that's probably who it is. But it didn't really matter. But my guess is it was an honest mistake.
That's what I figure. And honestly, what was it, 2,300 plus ballots counted? That there were really only 2 that were in dispute. The hand count was 2 off from the machine count, which was a machine count. And again, there was those 8 extra ballots they found that they hand counted after November 4th. But it was, I feel good. No, okay, these machines are pretty accurate, right? They give you the count that they say that they tabulate, and they pull a couple aside that were in dispute, but the machine counted them, and that's why you have 1-1 vote taken away from the candidate. But all in all, we have to feel good about our elections. Our elections department, the way I thought Will did a spectacular job handling that whole thing. It was interesting to see, first time for me observing one of those in person, and I don't want to disparage other surrounding communities which have, their town clerk ends up running the elections. But here in Lowell, with all the complications that go into running an election in Lowell as opposed to Drake at Tingsboro, Chelmsford, wherever, it's good to know you got a guy with Will's background, Will's experience, following up on a guy, like he replaced Greg Pappas, who also had his 3 decades plus of experience. We're lucky in Lowell. We got some qualified people in our elections office.
And I think that was one of Tommy's best hires, was to reach out to Greg. Greg's probably done over 30, I think, recounts he's been involved in. If that was me, I would have, of course, I'm friends with Greg, personal friends. I would have called Greg and said, listen, will you stay by my side for advice? I still would have hired an attorney. I would have reached out to see if Arthur Sullivan was available. Arthur's probably the best, was the best in the state, Newman. And you're probably not going to need them until you go to court. If enough ballots were pulled to the side, that's where the attorneys really come in. And I'll give you a quick story why I'm glad he did it. After the election with Barack Obama, there was a lot of Clinton supporters in the greater Lowell area. And John Kerry, who supported Obama, was up for re-election. And Roger Lau is an old friend, and Roger reached out to a lot of us and said, will you come down to Blue Shamrock? Was either Saturday morning or Sunday. John Kerry will be there. So, no hard feelings, John. He's given his reasons why he went with Obama. And I said to him, back in, I think it was 2004, was the Ohio. I said, you ran for president, and if you had won Ohio, you would have been president, and you didn't ask for a recount. Why? And he said, you can't hold up the presidency. He says, you can ask for recounts. And remember with Bush and Gore down in Florida? And John's answer was, to me, you can't hold up the presidency. At one point, and I'm still saying to myself, I don't know. I think I still would ask for a recount, for everything going on. But he didn't. But that was his answer. And to me, it was legitimate. You don't hold up the office of the president.
So now we know the full makeup of the Lowell City Council. Last time you were with us was the morning before the election. What do you see? What do you see for the next 2 years with this current council? 3 new faces.
Well, my prediction came through. The 2 areas they targeted, they did, and they won. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. One of the things, and the other part of that conversation was, will they fire Tommy? No, city managers don't get fired. You just don't have support in a lot of cases that you really need. I don't know. You have to wait to January to see what happens. This mayor's race could split the council even more than it is now. But I still think that 7-4 advantage was evaporated. It's going to be closer now. There's going to be more votes that probably won't go in the manager's favor. That's how I've reached out to a couple of old political people in the city, and I said, listen, my prediction. They laughed and they said, you're at it again. You're in trouble. And I said, no. I said, but 2 of the city manager's biggest supporters got beat. The third was within 39 votes to an unknown of losing his seat. Should that send a message to the manager? They said, oh, it should. It should. So I don't know if it will.
Now, you mentioned there were 2 incumbents who lost. Cory Belanger, who was at risk from day one. He was appointed to that
He did a good job. I thought he was doing a great job. I live out there.
The other one was Paul Ratayem, who also has faced pretty good challengers in the past, in each and every election. Dave Willett, Froon Kembe. They finally found somebody who beat him. The they being
the other side.
The other side, right?
I always say the other side. I don't get into it.
But you look at downtown, and you had put Wayne Jeunesse in that 4 of that 7-4 split, and yet he ends up getting upended by Sean McDonough.
Right.
Another newcomer with most
very good. He was a great candidate.
He was. Conventional wisdom being, though, the other side of the river, Centerville/Pawtucketville, is what got him elected to that seat. So can you take a lot from that? And ultimately, do you see a council? So do you see what I remember the Jim Milanazzo, Kevin Murphy moment, right? After the whole high school debacle, and then in January of, I think it was January or one of the first meetings of the year, Jim Milanazzo basically said to Kevin Murphy, I've lost faith in you, which to me was the signal, like, listen, it's January, you haven't announced your retirement yet, I'm going to push it along. And, within a couple of meetings, Kevin Murphy had said, okay, I'm ready to retire and move on. Eileen Donahue was brought in. Do you see that kind of a moment?
No, because the people coming in are novices. Jimmy Milanazzo had been on the council for over 20 years. He had a lot of experience.
Almost city manager himself at one point.
Right. And he has a lot of experience, but he has a great reputation. I love Jimmy. I still bump into him every now and then. And he was a great city councilor, a great mayor. So he has the reputation. And it's not personal. None of this is, when I lost, I didn't take it personal. I said I'd give a city manager a contract that wasn't popular with a lot of people. Well, hey, here you go. And I don't know. It's I don't think anyone, Belinda Duran doesn't have the experience. The guy from the Acres, Sidney Lang, he doesn't have the experience to do it. Their problem is, and when you watch the meetings every week, it appears Eric Gitchie is the smartest guy in the room, and Eric has a lot of experience at municipal. And Corey, you know, there's two people there that just haven't gelled with this administration. So we'll see if they follow them or how. I don't know.
And yet on most of the issues, because if there's going to be counselors questioning the administration and what they're doing, it's generally either Eric Gitchie or Corey Robinson. And yet
experience. Yeah.
And yet 90% of the issues plus they're all in agreement on.
Well, it's
the only
even
issue.
When I was on, I would say 90%, over 90% of the votes were 9-0. Yeah, they just
right. There's only, if you think about it, there's maybe 2-3 issues per council term.
Well, that really
split the council, right?
Let's look at the paper yesterday. There was a big story on Smith Baker.
Yep.
Now the Smith Baker, the council voted to get rid of it, and it was funny because the following Saturday I had Paul Rathiam and Dennis McCarthy on my show. Yep. And I didn't know Dennis. I met him that day, his daughter. I know his two brothers, Steve and Kevin. I went through high school with those two. And so we're talking, and during a break, I said, hey, did you guys see the Lowell Sun today? And they said, no. It was 7 in the morning. I showed them the letter, the story, Dan Rivera from the
Coalition for
Baker. Yeah, said, you know, we're willing to work with the city council. And they said, that doesn't bear well for you, you know. But they've come back. I think the loan is going through Northern Bank.
Yep.
They've been big in Westfit and Chelmsford. They're in the area. They've been in the area a long time.
Looking to get big in Lowell. That's they're trying to increase the footprint in the city.
There's who's left? Lowell Bank and Jean d'Arc.
Yeah. Really? I think they just don't Washington Savings, but they're a smaller bank.
Smaller.
But they've
Chase has come in.
Look, they just put their logo on a pretty high profile project.
Which one?
Smith Baker Center, Northern Bank. So that's a bold play. But so, you kind of look in the end. I always get the sense the manager didn't want to tear that building down, but the council voted, what was it, 9-1 or something? It was an overwhelming vote to tear it down.
Yeah, there was a big
There was
vote.
a few that weren't there, and Paul Ratayem couldn't ultimately. But it was an overwhelming vote to tear it down, and then the council eventually reverses course, with a few people still saying tear it down, but they reverse course, and here we are sitting there on November 24th, and it appears that this old historic building that everybody professed they want to save, but we just have to tear it down for the good of the people and the safety of the people. It now looks like it's going to get saved.
No, I didn't watch the whole meeting.
To me, this is a win for the administration.
Not yet, because what happened was I didn't watch the whole meeting. I guess it went to executive session.
Yes.
And there's a Facebook story today on the Lowell Sun. How do they know who voted how and all this information when they haven't released the minutes from the
because the group that, I'll tell you how, the same way I found out, the group that Lowell Center for the Arts put a Facebook post out and said, we got the, obviously they were notified that they got a deal.
This is something that came before the council that they had a vote on. Mm-hmm. It went to executive session. And now the newspaper has the conversation, I guess, and the votes from executive session. That's not good. That's not good.
So I saw that post from Councilor Gitchie.
Yeah.
First of all, why did that go to executive session?
I have no idea.
Why did that thing have to go to executive session?
If it's a private group getting the finances from a bank on their own, which it looks like, I don't even see why the city hasn't they're going to have to do permits and things like that.
Right, and there's timetables that they have to meet. I understand.
Right.
I understand that. They're giving them a certain amount of time. They have to shore up the roofs.
But they're smart because what was the last project they got money for? And if it ever comes to the point where we'll go to a private, you have to pay the money back. That won't happen in this case because it's a private. I guess it's a nonprofit, and they're getting the money from Northern Trust.
Right.
Now,
and they're also kind of using it for the building's original intent.
Right.
Right.
But, well, there was a church.
Right, but it was also the senior center. It's kind of
the senior center in the 1980s.
Right, but
prior
I'm saying
to that,
it's a community type development. It's not like they're giving it to a private developer who's going to turn a profit.
If you go to any city and town in Massachusetts, in the center of a town, there's a congregational church. They were funded by the state in the early days.
Yes.
It was British. That was a congregational church. There were several in Lowell. So its original intent was a church. Now, unfortunately for churches, attendance is way down. I love the idea that they're going to keep it. I love the idea they started a nonprofit or they started an organization. They got the finance on their own. Because if it falls through, the city doesn't have to pay back anybody, which they have to do with some grants. I forget what the last one was, but they would have to. It might have been the Smith-Baker. It might have been the Smith-Baker.
As I say, it appears to be a win-win. Again, the only negative would be if somehow this were to fall through the financing, they couldn't get it done.
Right.
We get some massive cost overruns. That means they can't fix it. Well, we're back where we started, but at this point, from what I understand, it's not going to cost the city any more money.
From what I read,
we got that white elephant off the city's books. Will it come back on? I don't know. The bank will actually own it. Now it becomes the bank's problem if and when the deal falls through.
I was trying to figure that out this morning. I read the article yesterday because, as I said, I had, after the vote to demolish it, I had Paul Rathie on and Dennis. And so I was kind of rooting for them to save this thing. I read the article, and I'm saying, why did this go to executive session? The only thing I could think of, and I could be way off because I'm not, like I said, I've been on vacation for a month, is would the city have to pay it back? Because it wasn't. That was a senior center in the 1980s and 1990s, yeah. But other than that, when I was at City Hall, I worked there in the 70s, and I was always down there. I was a mailman. I don't remember anything really being in there.
It was used as a community space. I remember telling you the Hellenic used to have its Greek Independence Day programs there, which kind of, a much more involved business model now, but it seems it'll be the same business model.
Right.
So I don't see where the city or even that group is going to have to fork over $400,000 or whatever that number was to HUD, right? Unless the deal falls through, and then again we're back to where we were.
Yeah. And that brings me to another point in downtown Lowell. What's historical? Everything's don't touch that tree, I keep hearing this person was here, this person was there. They're doing the old hotel over on Central Street, JJ's. Now,
JJ Turner's.
They always say Poe was at the old Worthing. I don't think the old Worthing was in existence when Poe was here. JJ's was, and it was right next to the train station. The old Rialto was the train station. Yeah. And he had an affair, allegedly, with a girl who lived up the street on Richmond Street, Mary Richmond. Her husband was a mill owner. And their house the house is still there. It was made out of the same stone that was the old Highland Tower on Lawrence Street. So, my guess has always been, well, Poe was probably there. I don't know if the old Worthing was around at that time. Well, maybe it was.
Maybe he popped in for a drink there as well.
He was known to.
Yes, he was. We're now, the attention is shifting to the next election, which will be before we know it. We're 2.5 months away from the state Senate Democratic primary.
Yep.
Vanna Howard, Rodney Elliott, the two state reps, two of Lowell's three straight reps, are vying to replace Ed Kennedy. That campaign is well underway. Actually, I was driving through. Going to Drake yesterday to pick up something at the pharmacy out there. Got to give a plug to Alexander's Pharmacy, family-owned, independent
great place.
Pharmacies, great family, and I try to support them any chance I get instead of the big conglomerates. But but I started seeing the Rodney Elliott for state senate
Go through Belvedere.
in Pawtucket. I went through Belvedere at night, so I probably missed them, but I assume the Vanna Howard and Rodney Elliott signs are out there as well for state senate. Did we learn anything about that race? You had said before the race, the Belvedere, the District 3 race, might offer a hint into what happens in the state senate
I do
race.
too, because it goes down ballot, I believe in
So
that.
you had kind of said that. So now that we got that out of the way, we know what happened in Belvedere, and while Belinda Duran, the candidate that, you know, folks, a lot of the her supporters are Vanna Howard supporters, and vice versa, she did win, but the margin was a lot tighter than most people would have guessed. Does Rodney Elliott take anything positive from that, or is it a completely new election?
I've talked to him a few times. Everything he's done, everything he's touching has a positive tone to it. He's been out through Drake, and from what I understand, he owns it at this point.
That was with Greg Pappas. Last Tuesday when Greg Pappas was here, he basically said he's already done the work in these communities, and he'd been doing it long before in anticipation of this run at some point or another, you know, depending on whether Ed Kennedy decided not to run for re-election in 2026 or at some point in the future. The conventional wisdom was Rodney Elliott's been preparing for this run for a long time. And he's done what Eddie did. Eddie was in the towns long before they couldn't announce because he was on the council. And he and Rodney both faced the same issue. But Eddie was in getting support from a lot of Democratic leaders prior. And I think Rodney has done that. The interesting one I thought was looking at was Rodney will probably do well in Pawtucket and Centerville. Rana would be downtown and Belvedere. The Highlands would be open. And Vesna's very strong in the Highlands. So that I thought that might give her an edge. But Rodney's very strong in the Cambodian community. He's got a ton of signs out. When he was mayor, somebody said that to me over the weekend. There are a ton of Rodney Elliott signs on Cambodian front lawns.
He reached out to the Cambodian community, and Mayor Murphy did too. Mayor Murphy was very involved with the Cambodian community. Rodney was also very involved, and they haven't forgotten him. He's got a ton of signs out there, and I expect him to get a ton of support in the Asian community. And the Cambodian community, it's going to be interesting. I think he beats her handedly right now with the support he's getting in these towns.
You believe the towns. So you're kind of echoing. By the way, it reminds me, you and Greg Pappas were supposed to be in here together, and then Greg unfortunately had some health issues.
And I are very friendly,
but we need to get the two of you in here together. But he said the same thing, you know, because my thinking is, all right, Lowell should be close, right? And then it'll come down to the towns. And Greg kind of said the same thing, because this election is going to be decided in Drake at Tingsboro and to a lesser degree, you know,
that's
Dunstable and Pepperell.
Paul Sheehy got defeated by Sullivan. What was her? The Sullivans. I'm drawing a blank here.
She was Nancy Aiken.
She was the head of the girls' club.
Yes.
And I'd walk in and I'd see her and I'd say, Nancy, boy, you're doing. Oh, she's very upbeat, very. And she beat cancer several times, and at that point, and she won. I said, how the heck? And they concentrated on the town. Stay close in Lowell, go to the towns, and that's where they win it. And her husband, Arthur Sullivan, there's no one better in political life in the area.
The caveat to that, it was a Democrat versus a Republican. It was at a time when the Republicans still had some semblance of an identity in Massachusetts, right? Ed Brooke had been a state senator.
Well, you go beyond that.
They were getting governors from time to time.
Her grandfather, I think, was the mayor of Lowell, '80.
Yeah.
Very popular.
She was connected.
And there was still a huge Franco-American population in Lowell, and a bigger one in Drake.
Drake was very much Franco-American. But now you're looking at a special election, a party primary, where in the middle of winter, February 3rd, chances are it's going to be cold, might be snowy, might be icy, whatever the case may be. We have the caveat of mail-in voting, which they didn't have back in the 70s and 80s. But the primaries generally low turnout when the partisans show up. And with the Democratic Party, the energy in Massachusetts and maybe around the country is on the left, which seems to dovetail more towards Vanna Howard and her supporters. How does Rodney Elliott get the more conservative Democrats out of Draken and Tingsboro, but more importantly, the 53% of independents in our state to come out and pull a Democratic primary ballot on that day? There is no Republican race as far as we know. Can he get independent voters who don't necessarily have a horse in this race to come out on a cold winter's day to pull a ballot for a more centrist candidate?
I've gotten a couple of calls, I'll be honest, in a couple of conversations. They said, you worked in New Hampshire in 08 and some in 2012, even though Obama was running unopposed. And I said, yeah. And they said, how do you do a campaign in January? And I said, it's tough, let me tell you. I mean, I was only a volunteer, but 7 o'clock in the morning, people don't want to talk politics, and that's when it's light out. 4 o'clock, it's dark. 4:15. You can't go knocking doors. You have all your signs out. One good snowstorm, they're destroyed. It's really. So one of the things you have to do is reach out, and both of these candidates have enough money in the bank to do mailings, and that's where you might have a big advantage. Rodney might have an advantage if, from what I'm hearing in Drake, he has that much support, because what they'll do is they'll make calls. You have to make calls, and we didn't have that technology in 08. Texting, asking your friends to come out. I don't think we saw it. Vesna, I think, did it in the council. They send out the text of the date of the election. Don't forget to vote. Don't forget. So you're touching as many ways as you can. But if the weather is bad, on that is it a Tuesday primary?
It's a Tuesday, yep.
So if the weather's
Tuesday,
bad,
February 3rd. But there will be a mail-in voting available. No early voting, but there will be mail-in voting.
It's still tough. People don't anticipate that.
The mail is also a little slower in the winter, right? Fair to say?
No. You can go right through. What really slowed a lot of it down was when we did mail-in voting. You remember downtown Lowell, we had the Lowell only box?
Yes.
Look, people would utilize those. Highland Station, we had downtown Lowell only boxes. So it never left the city. It would come in a bag. Matter of fact, I think they used to hit the outside box at 8:30 or 8:15 and cancel a mail and then would come in. You don't really have that anymore. I guess some towns do. Maybe Lowell does. But it's such a hit and miss. And those national campaigns have a way with phone calls and knowing who their supporters are to get them out. But in 08, it was a nice day. I remember election day. I didn't go up. I worked on the election right up through, I think, Monday night. There was a huge rally in Manchester. And then you were holding your breath for Tuesday. And then I left early. I had to go to a union meeting, and we had the results from Dixville Notch. And Hillary won by 2 votes, which is a good sign. But it's tough. I feel for both candidates if there's a storm. I just don't know what to say.
All right. It's Monday with Marty, chatting with our good friend Marty Laurie, former Lowell City Councilor, now one of our favorite political pundits here in the city of Lowell, in the political bubble, as Jerry Nutter likes to call it. We'll talk a little bit more with Marty about some other issues. We're going to take it out to the statewide level for a little bit, maybe even the federal level. Of course, this is the show that keeps its finger on the pulse of Lowell and the world around it. First, let me thank my Daily Pulse sponsors, Ray Booten, licensed realtor in Mass and New Hampshire, certified appraiser in both states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, get in touch with Ray today. Online, realestaterayBooten.com. That's realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to WellPoint. It's the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Washington Savings Bank, banking that feels like home. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank with offices and branches in downtown Lowell and in Drake. TMI Properties, TMI Cares, developing and managing their own properties for over 30 years. Experience the quality, the care, and the value of making TMI the choice for your home. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to generations of families throughout Greater Lowell and Southern New Hampshire since 1925. And by the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in our communities through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Thank you to all of our Daily Pulse sponsors, all of our podcast sponsors who we just ran right through. Thanks to Marty Laurie for being here as well.
I got coffee all over me.
You spilled coffee on yourself on the. It was a good thing you're wearing just a cheap sweatshirt there.
You know, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. I used to have a stuttering problem, and like today, even when I said Counselor-elect Jadon, I didn't try to stop. I just went right to Jadon.
Well, so we were the batch crew and whoever was poking fun at the fact that you kept calling the candidate Belinda Duran.
Duran.
Yeah. So and you had a conversation where you said, well, I've had a stuttering problem. By the way, nobody. That's the first time ever. You have never said anything. Nobody who's known you has ever said anything.
Certain syllables
to me
used
or
to get
whatever.
me. I remember I was in a class at UMass Lowell. It was a history class, and you had to read certain things. Well, the first paragraph, the syllables didn't line up the way I needed it to. And I turned around. The woman next to me was laughing like hell, you know. And so I just learned, just slow down. Or if I say them wrong, just come back. Oh, wait a minute. And then correct yourself. Once you try to start catching up, I mean, I used to walk around with ponchos for people in case I started stuttering, you know. And no, it's something I worked on for years and finally got rid of.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never realized that. So,
yeah.
But Belinda, that Marty's not butchering your name.
I'll say it again, Duran.
Belinda Duran. We got him. Look, listen, you've been doing radio and podcasting now for what? Well over a decade,
I'm trying to stay my wife's Lila Laurie quick.
Lila Laurie. That's a tongue twister.
That's a tongue twister.
So you pointed my attention to a story. Was it in the Herald this morning?
The Herald, yeah.
Medford, Massachusetts has decided they're going to empty the trash. They're going to pick up the trash every 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was funny.
Not every week, every 2 weeks.
You think they'd get a grant from the state saying, I've read the story briefly, they get a grant from the state. Now,
this a cost-cutting measure? Did they have garbage pickup in the town? Or
I turned off my phone. They had put in for a grant with the state, and they got the grant. And I guess they came out with this great report. And now they're talking about picking up garbage twice a
month instead of every week.
You know, and if it was me, I'd get a state grant to pick it up twice a week.
Yeah. So is that, are they doing that to save money, or are they doing that to encourage people to recycle more?
I think it's recycle more. It's environmental. Yeah.
We'd lose our minds here in Lowell. Do you remember when I go back to you might have been on the council when Bernie Lynch proposed picking up yard clippings.
We did
every other week. And he did it as a cost-saving measure.
Bernie saved
people lost their minds.
Bernie saved over $1 million in that contract. And it was funny. People went right out of their mind that the grass clippings were going to be there. And I think Bill Samaras comes in every week now, every other week. And I think that carried over with Bill. I'm just looking here if I can come up with it here. Oh, Medford trash pickup change sparks outrage as Massachusetts considers food waste disposal. To plan to roll back trash service to once every 2 weeks. It's in the Herald today. Yeah, that is a tough one.
Are they going to try to force you to separate your food from your other trash and go in? Because good luck getting those garbage bins picked up by a new company.
If I lived in Medford, I'd probably reach out to a couple of neighbors to see if they wanted to chip in for a dumpster, like one of those small 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲 things. And they're not expensive. And just tell the city when we get our trash bill, screw you, we're not paying it, we're doing our own. And I don't know what they're going to do. I think for a city to go back 2 weeks, I mean, there has to be a public health problem there somewhere.
So that was going to be my thought. You're going to start to create some other issues here that we had the whole point of The whole point of making sure the garbage was picked up on time every week or whatnot was for a public health reason.
The council is unhappy.
Now we're going back to the other. It does. I'm going to guess they're going to lose their minds. I can tell you what would happen in Lowell if anybody ever proposed that.
You'd go right out of your mind. And but just on grass clippings, so boy, that's really bad. It's not really. Is Medford congested? Kinda.
It's one of those Bostons. What are they? Probably about 70,000, I'd say, is their population, if I had to guess.
I went to the book sales now. Is it Med? Which one's on the train station?
Medford, Malden.
Medford, and that's really nice. That wasn't. That was more stately homes near the downtown that I saw. But yeah, the other one has the triple deckers and nice town, very, very nice, and great, biggest library sale I ever saw. And but I'm not a big fan of that.
Okay. Are you a big fan of Governor Maura Healey's first 3 years in office? She's now starting to catch some heat because as she continues to try to fight the Trump administration, she's blaming the skyrocketing energy costs in Massachusetts and what are going to be the home heating costs now, which we remember from last year, became a big political issue. She's again trying to blame, Washington, D.C. for that. Forgive me if I'm kind of dumb here, but so I looked at energy prices and the country as a whole. So, the gas prices are what gas prices are, right? Massachusetts, Ohio, Pennsylvania, wherever. But Massachusetts energy we pay the second highest rate for our energy in Massachusetts of any of the 50 states. Number one is Hawaii, which faces some logistical challenges. You've got to run energy and electric lines out to Hawaii from a mainland somewhere. Massachusetts doesn't face that issue. So for Maura Healey to try to blame anybody but Massachusetts' failed energy policies for why people's heating bills are skyrocketing and their electric bills are skyrocketing, that's a little disingenuous, but will it work?
Well, yeah, to a degree. Well, first of all, they're playing the tape of her. I think it was on GBH or one of those stations. And when she was Attorney General, remember, I stopped two gas lines from coming into Massachusetts.
Bragged about it. She was running for governor at the time when she said that.
Now the thing with pointing the finger at Trump, people that don't like Trump, you're not going to change their mind anyway. You're only going to reinforce it.
Which I think, by the way, it may help her because there are a lot of people in Massachusetts who don't. And they say, it's Trump's fault that I'm paying this.
She's getting out their vote. Now, she's getting out their vote big time. And that's what she's trying to do, get her vote out. And, but yeah, they have her on tape saying she stopped these things. Now it was in the paper today. She lost a swing. I think it was Peter Lucas's column, who does a show here.
Yep.
Mayor Wu went up and cut the tree down in Canada, not Maura Healey. But I'm not a big fan of the governor. I'd be happy if she'd be willing to step aside and let Kim Driscoll run the state. Kim Driscoll is the all-star. She turned around Chelsea as town manager. She turned around Salem as mayor. Kim Driscoll is the real deal. And I think if the Democrats wanted to hold the seat, and I don't know who the Republicans are going to pick, but Kim Driscoll is the real person in that who I think could turn the state around.
It doesn't appear that Maura Healey is going anywhere. I do believe she thought that had the 2024 presidential election turned out differently, that she could be Attorney General of the United States and get out of there. But I think she's running because she has nowhere else to go right now.
How many people in her cabinet have stepped down in the last 2 years?
Was it like 9 out of 11 or something?
There's a lot of them. Yeah. And now they just caught a staffer out in Springfield. What was it, with cocaine and a gun?
Enough cocaine to kill a few
Massachusetts, they've jailed a couple of people, one person on a dangerous charge for just having a gun. This guy's walking free. Yeah. They just got another
the gun thing strikes right at you. That's a core issue you've been talking about.
This is incredible. They just let out, 1 or 2 more second-degree murderers because they were 20 years old when they decided to bash someone's skull in or stab them. And I don't know if those are her picks or Charlie Baker's, but you know, when you hear the politicians, well, that's the parole board, and the Supreme Judicial Court said you can't put a kid under 20 away for life. It's unconstitutional. It doesn't mean you have to let them go, you know, and they're voting to let them all go. And I don't see anything where you have to do that. These people are coming back on the street. That's why the prisons aren't full. They're letting them out. And they're not arresting many people. They don't have enough cops.
You've predicted the gun issue, which Massachusetts is it seems to be a very, crackdown on tighten gun laws.
You have to go for police.
You're predicting, though, that could be a winning issue for Republican gubernatorial candidate, actually. How strict our gun laws are.
Very strict now. And to the point where they got 90,000 signatures in 30 days to put this on the ballot. I don't know who writes the question. I think it's the Attorney General. And all of a sudden, there's a nonprofit that was started to support the gun bill. And so it's funny. They got 90,000 signatures. I know they're working hard. I think 2 out of the 3 Republican candidates said they're going to repeal it on day one. They're just going to repeal that. And
are there enough gun owners in Massachusetts to make that a winning issue?
I was Googling those statistics. There's about 700,000. Now, how many belong to gun clubs or organizations where these are talked about? I can tell you gun clubs along the border lost a lot of members, because if you come in and you target shoot or you shoot clay pigeons, I guess they want you to register your guns now. They're not going to do that. They're not going to come in and register their guns. They were mad at the state of Massachusetts. They all bought hunting licenses. Then they said, we're not going to hunt in your state if we have to, because if you get pulled over and that gun's not registered in the portal, you're going to jail. If you live in New Hampshire and you come in to hunt, or and you don't have a license, out-of-state license, you're going to jail. And it's been that way for a long time. So everyone always just applied. You go to the police station, you apply for your license, and it used to take about 3 months. And if you don't have a criminal record, a background record, they give it to you. I think what happened was with that Bruin case, people would go and they would apply, and Massachusetts put this little thing at the bottom, good for sporting only, so you couldn't carry. Right. But that got thrown out with Bruin. Now there's a case that went. This was interesting. If you're between 18, you're under 21, I don't think you can own a gun in Massachusetts. I don't understand the law, and I don't think the cops do either. Anyway, one of the young men has filed a charge. I think he was a veteran. I'm 19 years old, 20, and I think in the first steps in the court cases, he's won. You just can't do that, And then they banned a whole lot of guns in the state. They have a advisory board, but Bruin said if the gun has been in existence and it's a long time, you just can't ban them. So but the problem is Massachusetts can keep pushing this, and the gun rights groups will have to fight it, but they have to pay for attorneys.
Correct.
So what they'll do is they'll just bankrupt them. Now there was a bill, and I asked, they wanted to eliminate hunting in certain state-owned lands. That wasn't going anywhere. And now there's a bill in there that you can sue the gun company. So if someone's robbing a bank, or if some member of your family's killed by a gun, and it doesn't matter if it wasn't a crime or anything, well, you can sue the gun maker. And I don't think that's going anywhere. Either.
Yeah, I'm not sure that one's going to pass U.S. Supreme Court muster, but we shall see.
This is going on around the country, and I saw a tape because I find the Supreme Court I always found interesting, and these will go to the Supreme Court. The Oregon Supreme Court, I think it was, had a case come before them, and the judge asked the state, is there any other constitutional right you have to apply for and get training for? Well, I don't think a driver's license is a constitutional. No, the judge said, no, it's not. Can you give us another example of a constitutional right where you would have to apply and receive training to? And they couldn't give it to him. And I said, wow.
Because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. No. So,
all right. I'll wrap up with, you mentioned Michelle Wu. She went to Canada to cut the Christmas tree.
She's a survivor. I like her politically.
I'll tell you what, she seems to be in a lot better shape politically than Governor Maura Healey.
Yeah, she's a survivor. I mean,
which begs the question: when is she going to go to the White House and stand next to President Trump, as Zoran Mamdani did just 3 days ago?
I wish Trump would. He has some great politics. Just keep your mouth shut. His mouth gets him in more trouble. Politics is like the playground. You pick your fights. You don't want to just go. He doesn't. He throws his 2 cents in.
He loves the fight.
He loves the fight. This thing with Ukraine. A little blob in the paper last week, all these European companies giving Ukraine money. And the Germans said, well, we're going to give you the money, but we want you to start investigate the corruption in the government. And I think it had to do with heating oil. I'm not sure. So they're admitting there's corruption in that government, and you're giving them more money. I know people attacked Obama because the Russians went into Crimea in 2014, but the head of the Ukraine was a pro-Russian leader. So, but now they're bringing up. There's a great book, the Soviets starved probably 5 to 6 million Ukrainians in World War II. I forget what's called the harvest of, but anyway, it's the other thing that bothers me with the Ukraine. At the end of the Cold War, they had the most nuclear weapons. They were on the border, and Gorbachev, if you get rid of those nuclear weapons, we'll never attack you. Blah blah blah. The United States, if you get rid of those weapons, will always support you. Well, those weapons are gone. Now the Ukrainians are on their own. And I just think both governments don't look good because of that agreement. Mm-hmm. So,
well, we shall see. Will that be the next peace agreement signed? There's some reason for optimism.
But watch that thing with Nodami. Everyone's making fun of him. We had someone run here. He was a Democrat socialist. Yep. That's the new Democratic Party.
That is the Democratic Party.
If you look at 2016, and these are hard, cold facts, Bernie Sanders was winning until the Democratic Party seniors.
The superdelegates.
2020, he was winning. Right now, he's going across the country with AOC. They are the biggest hits around the country. And I think with people under 35 or 40, Democrat socialists resignate. And I think that's a warning to Washington and state leaders. Start talking about issues. Stop this. We're going to indict this. Epstein, we want the files. What about people? Housing. What about starving people? What about energy?
Affordability is the big word.
This is the issue we should be talking about. And that's what the Democrat socialists talk about. You don't hear them talking about Epstein.
So that's
throw them all in jail. They don't care.
That's the part I don't think people understand yet what's happened to the political landscape, but the traditional parties, the Republican and the Democrat, are dead. The Republican Party, as we know, it died probably in 2010 with the Tea Party. Now, the Tea Party caucused with the Republican Party,
right?
But they eventually got their candidate the nomination in 2016, Donald Trump. And I think you'll see it in 2028, where the Tea Party candidate, J.D. Vance, will end up being the Republican nominee. For better or worse, the Republican Party is now controlled by the MAGA movement, the Tea Party. Yeah,
his marriage.
The old guards, they're afraid of this. I think you're seeing that same thing on the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party kind of embraced the Democratic Socialists, and we'll call it the communist movement. They embraced it because they needed that vote. They needed that energy. Now they can no longer control them, and you're going to see the next Democratic nominee for president is going to be one of these folks, whether it's Bernie Sanders himself or I personally think it's AOC. I've been predicting this since 2020.
Well, she's raising money for turkeys of food down there, and now there's speculation she's putting it into her accounts.
She's running to be president, not to replace
And then
Chuck
her family
Schumer.
History, which isn't the nicest, will probably come forward.
Sure. But again, all this stuff came out about Donald Trump too. All this negative stuff. It would have killed a traditional candidate 20, 30 years ago. It didn't. It made him stronger. I think the same thing's going to happen with AOC.
AOC and Bernie Sanders will continue talking about energy, housing, which is what happened in Lowell. He was a great candidate, smart young man. He talked about housing, putting houses up on Middlesex Street, and people were laughing at him. But this is what, you know, we can look at the economy and everyone, oh, you know, Wall Street's doing this. And there's two things happening is artificial intelligence, our research money's going into that. They're bleeding jobs in this country. And whatever gains you get on the marketplace and on Wall Street hasn't made its way down to the hourly workers, okay? The hourly workers have been left out. And until they're included, the Democratic Socialists talking about food, housing, transportation, daycare, that's what's going to resonate with the voters. In 2022, don't be surprised if the Republicans are thrown out of office. 2026 on those issues. Yeah,
we shall see. We're getting close to that 2026 election cycle now that Lowell's 2025 cycle. We do have a little stop to make along the way, though, the state Senate special election. We'll talk about that in the coming weeks.
It's going to be interesting.
Marty Laurie, as always, Mondays with Marty. I like Mondays with Marty.
It's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I mean, I have my issues. Not everyone agrees with me, but
it's okay.
That's okay, too. I don't insult people.
That's right. I kind of do sometimes. But anyway, thank you so much. Have a great Thanksgiving to you and Lila and all your...
And happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
All right. Thank you to Marty Laurie. Thank you for tuning in as well here to the Daily Pulse. Tomorrow, we are going to chat with Erin Gendron, Lowell City Council candidate, ironically enough, from Belvedere. We'll talk to her about the local political scenes, but also about some public health issues. Hey, maybe I'll even get her to weigh in on Medford's trash situation as well. I have to read more of this story now that Marty was telling me about, but it's the Daily Pulse, the show that keeps its finger on the pulse of Lowell and the world around.
She's a great candidate. I love her. She's a smart individual.
Yep. And
she's doing good.
We're going to make her a regular here on the Daily Pulse as well. Everybody stay safe, stay warm. We shall see you on the other side.